This guitar was not built for metal. And these pickups were definitely not built for metal. In fact, they're the lowest output Tele style pickups I could find on the Bare Knuckle site. They're called Country Boy. So can we take this guitar from sounding like this to sounding like a metal monster? Hello there, I'm Chris. Today I'm going to show you how you can take a non-metal guitar, plug it into a non-metal amp such as the Fender Blues Junior, and add a whole bunch of pedals to the mix and hopefully make it sound really metal. And I think we'll be able to draw some pretty interesting conclusions from this. Let's check it out. Here are the tools we'll work with today. Now remember, I'm plugging all of this into a clean Fender Blues Junior. So here's how it sounds without any of these pedals engaged. And you're going to notice that the first thing we really need is some kind of distortion to even start taking us towards rock or heavy metal land. And for this purpose, I have the Friedman BEOD, which is kind of like an amp in a box thingy, or at least a preamp in a box. It runs on 18 volts and it's very, so it has a very amp-like dynamic response and it has tons of gain. So let's engage it. Okay, that's already better, but it's more of like an AC/DC thing rather than some grinding metal. So we need more than that. And something you can do to push the signal is to boost it coming from your guitar. Especially if you got low output vintage pickups, you really want to bring the levels up. And sometimes that's enough to make a pedal such as the Friedman BEOD really go into high gain overdrive. So this is the MXR Dynacomp, and it's really like a country compressor, but you can also use it as a nice booster. And for this purpose, the sensitivity is set to 0. And the output currently is set to maximum. So let's engage it. Yes, and it's getting better here. Without it, with it. That's cool, but to my ears, there's still absolutely no juice. It's extremely raw. And to get some extra juice, a lot of people like to use the Tube Screamer TS-808. And famously, it can bring the levels up, more specifically the mid-range up. And when you hit distortion with lots of mid-range, it's pretty close to just boosting the overall volume, since the guitar is really all about mid-range. So let's engage the Tube Screamer. And you could immediately hear how I was able to catch much more aggressive pinch harmonics. And that's no coincidence. The TS-808 is really good at that. We can disengage it, engage it. So that's a very good contribution, I think, to any pedal board. Now, still not very heavy, right? So I would really like to take this from rock to metal. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to try and sculpture or even scoop out the mids to get that V-shaped distortion. And for that purpose, we have the MXR 10-band EQ. And you can see it is set as a slight V kind of shape. And the middle frequencies are, yes, you guessed it, in the middle. Those are the ones I've scooped out. And then there's a boost happening here around 125, 250 hertz. So those are low frequencies. It's not really low as in bass guitar frequency, or even, I don't know what you would call 62 hertz. That's below bass guitar. But it's really, we're aiming for the middle here. If we remove it. Now this, I don't know if you agree, but to my ears, that might be the most aggressive change in the sound we've achieved so far by adding this EQ at the end of the chain. So this comes after all of these pedals. So that's pretty cool. Now I do have another compressor here, and I've set it to parallel compression, so it's not compressing the whole signal. And I find that with this setting, it can really add some extra mojo and juice to any signal. So let's try it. But I didn't like it here. It just added a bit too much warmth. I think that's because this guitar is really not about metal, or it has a lot of warmth going, and this just makes it too much. So let's skip that ego compressor. And what more can we do? I still feel this isn't really as heavy as I would like it to. And there's one obvious thing we can do, and it has to do with this thing up here, which is a tuning peg. Yep, that's right. I tuned it down to drop D. I tuned the low E string to drop D. So I think that was the final nail in the coffin for that twangy, swampy sound, and I definitely think we're into metal land now. Ooh yeah, baby! Now that's a pretty brutal sound if you ask me. So what conclusions can we draw from this? Well, I for one was never really bothered about the low output coming from these pickups. I think it's pretty easy to just raise the gain or add a booster, no issues at all. In fact, I would argue that the opposite is pretty much the hard part. So if you have super high output pickups that have killed all dynamics in your guitar, there's no real way you can restore them afterwards. So I would actually advise against people buying like more metalish pickups. I think that's a foolish thing to do. If your pickups are like very dull, probably because they're super cheap, then that can be an issue. So if you have no brightness, but output, I would argue it's very seldom a problem. It's better to have the dynamics in the guitar. And in fact, I've done a lot of pickup swapping, and all of them have been to replace high output pickups with low output pickups. That's what I like to go for. That's what gives you the dynamic range. And as we could tell in this session, making a guitar sound metal, that's possible with a few pedals. You cannot restore lost dynamics with a few pedals. So, conclusion, don't buy pickups, buy pedals. So I hope you enjoyed this little session. You've been wonderful, and I've been Christopher Dahl. See ya.